views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
All right, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. It is Gary Axelbank. You know me from the other show, Bronx Talk, but this is our relatively new show called the Bronx Buzz. We do reporters roundtables every Thursday night at 6 o'clock. And tonight we're changing the format a little bit. You know, it's the Bronx. We can do what we want. And we're bringing in what we like to call photojournalists. We've done this before, and the idea is to let you meet some of the photographers who do things in the media and in the news, but also in galleries and elsewhere. And we have two of the Bronx's best and most well-known photographers. I don't want to say the oldest because they have been around a couple of years. We've been talking about the old days. I'm going to show you pictures from the old days. But Joe Conzo, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Gary.
Edwin Pagan, nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having us on.
For folks who are unaware, they are 2/6 of Seis del Sur, which is kind of a group of 6 photographers that got together, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm going to let them explain it because they can explain it a lot better than I can. So Joe, we were talking earlier, you were talking earlier about the formation of Seis del Sur and even the relationship with Eddie, which does not go back apparently to when you were younger.
No, it doesn't. Eddie and I just met maybe a handful of years ago.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a half hour ago.
A handful of years ago, but we knew of each other.
Right.
We had connections. We knew 6 degrees of separations. We knew common people, and Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong. It was at one of my photo exhibitions at Hunter College that I had some photos displayed, and they came out to support, and it was Eddie, Francisco Reyes, Ricky Flores.
I'm helping him out.
Yeah, no, I'm a little tongue-tied here. And
David
Gonzalez and Angel Franco.
Right.
And they came to support my exhibition, and we just hit it off. It was like, what, serendipity?
And so, Edwin, let's talk about the energy or the chemistry that works between you. Why did the two of you, and really all 6 of you, say, let's make Seis del Sur?
Well, I mean, we all had known of certain percentages of each other. Right? I knew Ricky for a long time. I used to run into him in the neighborhood all the time, going to do these political, what we call grin and grips, where the politicians kind of stand, the photo ops.
Oh, that doesn't happen anymore.
No, And I had heard about your work. I knew about Angel's work. I didn't know David yet. But also, just before we finish that story, the first time I met you was when I was working on my Bronx Burning documentary.
That's right.
David or Ricky had told me that if you're going to do this stuff, you got to talk to Joe Conzo. And when he told me that, I was like, oh man, we're talking about the South Bronx and I got to go uptown to talk to an Italian. And so I spoke on the phone. He was gracious enough to say, you can interview. This was an on-camera for a documentary. So I went to his place and I walk in. You got the Puerto Rican flag and everything else. And then
So
pictures
check,
of his family, and I know about his family, and all of a sudden I was blown away. And then fast forward to the day he had his group show at Hunter, and we all, when we got introduced in a huddle, we were like, well, we should do something.
What's the idea behind Seis del Sur?
Well,
and now this was really a couple of years ago. I mean, we've had you guys on the
2000,
other show,
2012.
and I've been to the exhibitions and everything. 2012, so
March 11, 2012, because we just had our 6th anniversary.
And what was the idea?
The idea was, one of the things we had all in common is that we documented the community from young men, right? I was raised in the community. We were either born or raised in the South Bronx, but basically the bulk of our life had been concentrated in the Bronx. We all were photographers. We all were documenting the region unbeknownst to each other. And so we knew that we had that in common. The interesting thing was that after we decided we should do something, we all friended each other on Facebook. And I think it was David Gonzalez that actually said, let's have a photo war. And he put up a photo, and the idea was that each one of us had to then find a similar photo.
A similar photo.
A similar photo from the archives. And this had to happen in rapid succession.
And if you see your work, and I've seen a lot of it in different contexts, it's similar but different, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
and it all comes out of the same thing. So then
Right.
that's how it was formed.
It was interesting.
Joe, you still take pictures.
I still take pictures.
Is there a difference aside from the obviously digital photography versus regular film photography? Is there a difference between what you're interested in, what you shoot, how you shoot, and what you look for now versus then?
Well, I'm still shooting the way I shot 30, 40 years ago. You know what I mean? I'm shooting my community, what's going on, mainly hip hop. I'm known for the man who took hip hop's baby pictures. New York Times coined me that.
And appropriate to say that today is the
Birthday of
today's
hip
the
hop.
birthday of hip hop.
Yeah, August 11th, 1973. Cool Herc did his first jam at 1520 Cedric Avenue, right here in the Bronx. So happy birthday, hip hop.
Okay,
Happy
go ahead.
birthday.
I had to interject that. Go ahead.
So I still shoot. It took me a long time to go from film analog to digital, but today you have to shoot digital. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't want to say you're stupid not to,
Yeah.
but it's going to cost you a fortune.
True.
And like nowadays, you can do 5 or 6 pictures, and or as many as you
well,
want.
I can go to an event and take 300 pictures.
So what we're going to do, we're going to show pictures. That
Sure.
was the idea. Our friends and neighbors in the Bronx want to see that. So let's see. Jayla picked them out. What do we got? These are Joe's pictures.
Those
What
are
do
my
we got?
pictures.
Wait. Go back. Well, we lost the first one. I want to see the first one. Or we can't go back.
These are just images from my neighborhood growing up.
Which is where?
In Prospect Avenue, 149th Street. This is
Slow down there. Don't go
Michelangelo, across the street from Michelangelo's, people that I grew up with. And I just was a chubby little kid with an afro walking
Right.
around with a camera.
Hold on to that for a second. What makes you think this or others? Like, what do you look for when you analyze whether it's a good photo or not?
I want to tell a story with a photo. You know what I mean? I want to transport somebody back to a time. I want to show them what I'm seeing.
Right.
Okay? So that's why I walk around with a camera. I want to show my neighborhood, the people that I interact with.
It is literally the definition of what photography is about: capture a moment.
Yes.
Right. So you capture that moment; it lives forever.
Yes.
Jayla, is it technically possible to go back to one of those, like the photo of the kid with the skateboard? I loved that photo, and or any of those, just to capture that before we move on. What is going on right now, folks, and this is live, they're cursing at me in the control room. I mean, I know that, but that's okay. It wouldn't be the first time or the last time. How many photos do you take? There we go. Oh, we
Okay,
lost
well, in this particular
ahead.
photo, if my dad was Tito Puente's manager, so when I wasn't photographing the neighborhood or my hip hop friends that I went to school with, I was photographing the Latin music giants of the 70s and 80s. And this is Johnny Pacheco performing at Beau's Restaurant right up here in the Bronx 30 years ago, which doesn't exist anymore.
Talk about capturing a moment.
Yeah.
Tremendous. Go ahead. All right, now, if they've stopped yelling at me in the booth. Now,
This-
hold this. I want to see this.
This is actually Charlotte Street.
Wow.
This is Charlotte Street, and this was, you see the Puerto Rican flag in the
Obviously.
back? It's about a 4-story tall flag that we put up in demonstration against the President Carter visiting the Bronx.
Wow. Talk about capturing a moment and defining a moment. I mean, so this is, we assume, in the 70s?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. of course.
77, 78
If,
when-
if President
yeah.
Carter was coming by. Wow. Again, take a look, folks. Talk about capturing a moment.
And Charlotte Street was the poster child of the Bronx at the time, you know what I mean?
Right, of course.
Paul Newman.
Wow.
Filming Fort Apache, the Bronx.
Wow.
You know, my grandmother, Dr.
Sorry,
Evelyn-
I'm playing a drum roll.
My
I
grandmother,
love it.
Dr. Evelyn Antonetti, had formed a committee with some young lords, Committee Against Fort Apache, and the movie had depicted the Bronx people as pimps, prostitutes, killers, drug addicts.
Of course, yeah.
And we protested the movie, and we went on the set, and that's one photo. That was actually my first photo I ever had published. New York
Wow.
Post paid me $25 for it.
Wow. Well, that's still what they're
Yeah.
paying for photos.
Yeah, well, probably.
Talk about a historical photo of the
Yeah.
Bronx. All right.
Lincoln
What is
Hospital.
this?
I grew up across the street from Lincoln Hospital.
You are so great. And where do we? Sorry, Edwin. You're
Yeah.
going to be great too. I promise.
Yeah.
But no, really, these are just tremendous.
And this
Keep
is
going,
the
go ahead,
neighborhood
Jayla, what
that
do we
I
got?
grew up, and that's one of the reasons why we did Say to Soul. You know what I mean? We wanted to show our perspective. This is United Bronx Parents. an organization that my grandmother started back in the 70s, that when she passed away, my mother took over. And it's a community organization. We were marching in the Puerto Rican Day Parade that day.
Wow. And the same era, pretty much, in
Yeah.
the 70s? Oh. What else we got? Go ahead, Jayla. And then I want to get to Edwin's photo.
My entire archive of about 10,000 images are deposited in Cornell University.
Wow.
They're preserved there. You know what I mean?
So do they still accept images so you can continue to build
they
that
have
library?
my current archive also.
Well, this really tells a story. No, this
Hip hop,
is a little
the
harder
Cold
to
Crush
see.
Brothers.
Oh, there we go.
You know, this is
Cold
a
Crush.
typical club scene when hip hop went downtown.
This was not in the Bronx.
No, this is actually in Harlem World that no longer exists.
Okay.
And the Cold Crush Brothers, Eddie and I grew up with a lot of them, and
I went to school with Adrian Harris.
and I photographed them.
This is the last one of yours we're going to show. Come on, let's go.
Thank you.
Applause. Edwin, before we look at yours, when you see those images, what do you think about it? I mean, some of those. I mean, the moment of getting Paul Newman in the Bronx. My goodness, that is an historical photo of all time.
Well, you know, that's the distinction with someone that's just taking candidates and someone who's an artist, right? You're looking not only for the aesthetic, but you're looking for the composition. You're looking to capture a moment. Like you said, you're looking to tell a story. And I think that's the distinction between someone who's just taking candidates and trying to, you know, capture something, document something versus being an artist.
And it really is a lesson. You know, we talked about the fact that we do reporters roundtables.
Right.
You know, so now we're doing reporting not with words, and we're doing some historical reporting. You know, you gotta have this kind of vision of the world. All right, let's see Edwin Pagan's photos. What do we got here? See, and you can tell right away it's a slightly different style.
Yeah.
It may be the same era or anything else. So what do we got here? What is this?
My favorite, when I was shooting, my favorite lens on the camera was the 35 millimeter,
Right.
which is a little bit wider than you see your eye sees. And so I always shot close to people, but allowed the scene to breathe. This was actually a demonstration that was going down through the Bronx. It was a protest against the Bronx Lebanon incinerator,
Wow,
which
I
was in
remember
Hunts
that
Point.
well, yes.
And we were doing the protest during that time, and it eventually got shut down.
Well,
but this
that is actually true. All right,
yeah.
next one. Uh-oh, we don't have a next one. There we go.
This is a
Same kind of thing, I would
companion.
guess.
This was walking down along where they had the protest, and I guess some of the activists had already peppered the neighborhood with some stencil work.
We were talking earlier about Bronx graffiti artists. Let's get some graffiti artists. But this is a different kind of graffiti that you know we saw on the trains and maybe on the side of your local deli. This is real directed stuff. All right, what do we got?
This was on. This is right almost on the side of
like
Ostos
Three Kings
Community
Day?
College. It is Three Kings Day. This is
Wow.
1990. And during that time, they were doing annually a Three Kings that would start at Ostos, on the corner of Ostos. This is on the very side of 149th and Grand Concourse. And this was just before the parade took off. And I just saw these kids, and they looked so great. And they were so happy. And one of them, as actually I started getting ready to photograph, and take our picture, mister. And I did. It was like, you know, they were totally involved.
And you have to remember, and it's very hard to have that perspective now, you know, what was then now, because nowadays everybody's got a cell phone and everybody's
a photographer.
Everybody's a photographer. Take my picture, or do you want to have a picture? Yeah, sure, I'll take a picture. But it was a lot different then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you look at it now, we would either have a roll of 24 exposures or 36.
Right.
Yeah.
And so every shot that we took meant
to count.
something.
And it had to count. I mean, we were talking about
Yeah.
this beforehand, because it would cost you.
It would cost
you
us.
for the film itself, and then of course for the
Printing.
development.
And that's one of the things that we always say, that as kids from the South Bronx, the poorest congressional district in the nation, particularly at that time, we took up the most expensive hobby.
But you couldn't not do it, right?
Right.
That's what you
No,
were
once
both clearly
we
doing.
we got hooked into it, that was
Wow,
it.
what do we got here?
This was actually what they call the wall, the 20th mile of the marathon, which is the
Willis
100
Avenue
Willis
Bridge.
Avenue. And this is a picture that ran with a story in the Village Voice. I called the image Candles in the Wind. It accompanied a photograph about racism. So the community is sort of passing these kids by. But the actual image, what it really was these kids that were working with volunteers to give out potassium and water for the runners going by.
And so they interpreted that in some form to be racist?
Right.
Because it was white runners and black
No,
kids?
it ended up illustrating a story that was about racism in the inner
see.
city. And since my image was called Candles in the Wind, it was kind of showing this sort of Anglo community sort of going by this.
Were you a higher paid photographer than your friend who made $25 from the New York Post?
Yeah, no, I think originally when I took that shot, it was for the Bronx Press Review, covering it. And then later, I guess one of their photo editors found it and paid me to illustrate one of the articles.
How many more do we have so I can time this right? What is this?
This is right on in the hub. This is along 149th. Between 3rd Avenue
and Morris.
And it's a funeral for a gang member.
And also, just to learn a little bit about photography, it goes back to what you said about the wide angle. So for you, it's the whole scene as opposed to Joe, who would pick an image and then put that image in some context. For you, it's the whole.
Yeah,
I am getting an education, ladies and gentlemen.
I like showing sort of people interacting in groups, and so that's always been sort of my focus.
Okay.
Again, you know,
clearly, because Joe would have picked. I could just see you would have picked one image and used that, and whereas you like the half a dozen.
Give Gary
people
a camera.
No, I do have one, but I can't do this.
So this was up there almost near Southern
excuse
Boulevard.
Me, I have a cell phone. That's true. Go ahead.
This was near Southern Boulevard, and I can remember I did this as a child myself, where we would gather up mattresses and either jump off of a building, the second or third floor, onto mattresses. Of course, these kids did it off a refrigerator that they probably found dumped in this lot.
All right, we got one more. Go ahead. Eventually, oh.
Yeah, this is iconic in the sense that I had become close at that time with the family. That's
after the fact.
After the fact.
For folks who don't know, Anthony Baez was killed by Francis Lavoti, a police officer who was choked. Yeah. So if you think what's been going on lately is the first time it ever happened, it's going on a little while.
And at the time, I had gotten close with the family. I was doing a lot of their flyers and helping them out with the arts.
The mom ran for office a couple
and I have
times.
photos of that as well. And what I did at that time is I would help them by helping them document the thing and do flyers for their events. And this particular series I had then commissioned by Latina Magazine. They were doing a story on her, and they used my photos for the article.
Are you prolific to this day? Do you still take pictures and you take a lot?
All the time. All the time.
Except not with your cell phone, of course.
No, sometimes I do.
Sometimes you have to, Gary.
Yeah. When there was the
you just did one before of us here on TV.
Yeah. When there was the explosion in Spanish Harlem, when those 2 buildings collapsed at 8 people, I shot it with the cell phone.
Wow!
And it's actually one of the earliest shots before anything. It's
usually we take a break, and the break goes to some PSAs or commercials, whatever we have. Today we're going to take a break, and what we're going to use is something done by the Bronx Documentary Center about Seis del Sur. So we're going to take a break, but you're going to watch something really special. So we'll take a break, but it's not a break. Don't go away.
I am a first-generation New Yorican, and I was born in the Bronx, but I was raised in El Barrio. My affair with the Bronx didn't happen too much later when I was already in my teens, but I had an off-and-on relationship with the Bronx because of my family. My aunts live in the Bronx.
Born and raised in the South Bronx. I picked up photography at an early age. As a matter of fact, I picked up photography around 72, 73 when I was enrolled in Agnes Russell private school at Columbia University. And I actually have my report card from back then. It says Joe is excelling in photography. So that was pretty cool. And photography's just been a love and passion of mine.
I was born in 1957. We were living on Beck Street. And I spent the first 7 years of my life on Beck Street, right by Intervale, actually. And I remember when I was 5 or 6, the neighborhood started to change. The windows were being broken fairly often in our building. Things were getting a little hectic on the streets, mostly like robberies and stuff like that. I'll never forget, a friend of my father's, Don Leonicio, who lived across the street, one day talked about how he had been mugged by another Puerto Rican, and that was the greatest indignity of all. Not that he'd been mugged, but that a Puerto Rican would mug him, a Puerto Rican. And so I remembered that. We moved from the neighborhood pretty soon after that.
I am my mother's firstborn child in the United States of America. I was born in the mainland USA, the Bronx, New York. I was born in 1951, so I'm much older than the rest of the five, because I guess being older, I'm 6. I was born at the old Lincoln Hospital, which as I was growing up into my teenage years, my mom would go up the Bruckner Expressway and go, "Mira, ahí fue que tú naciste," right? And all I saw was a mound of dirt and some grass. And so I thought I was, growing up, I always thought I was born like, you know, in a manger in the middle of the South Bronx.
I grew up in the South Bronx during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, probably during one of the most turbulent times in the city. It was rapid transformation from a community that was heavily populated by blacks and Latinos to being aggressively depopulated over a short period of time during the 60s and 70s, where you grew up walking through the streets of the South Bronx and a rubble-strewn lot and an abandoned building or a building that was collapsing was the norm. But in the midst of, you know, that existence, there was a large and vibrant community.
I was born in the Lower East Side, Loisaida, LES, and my mother moved up to the South Bronx when I was about 6 months old. I grew up in the Bronx at a time where the fires had already done a great deal of damage to the neighborhood. I grew up always smelling the smell of wood burning, of metal burning. It was always part of kind of the atmosphere, and you would always hear fire trucks zooming by at all hours of the night. So for me growing up in that time, it wasn't anything that was foreign to me. It was just part of the way I assumed it was everywhere else.
Well, there you go. Congratulations to you. Respect
you.
to you guys, and also to the Bronx Documentary Center.
Oh, they're doing such wonderful things over there.
Absolutely.
Edwin, I want to talk to you because you were in the news lately and kind of were very vocal about this Swiss Beats no commission art show that's going on in the South Bronx. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me what your concerns were and maybe still are.
Well, you know, we came sort of randomly across, you know, some social media postings, I guess the initial flyer for the event, and we started seeing that within the basis of it, they were calling the location as the Piano District, which was a bone of contention.
I think at this point they've backed off that.
Right,
yeah.
And so, but it had it on the flyer, and then the other thing, you read some
it
of
was
the
still
language.
on the flyer.
It was on the flyer. And so within the text of the flyer, it also said, bringing back music and art to the Bronx. Well, that bothered us because I didn't know the art had left the Bronx.
To say, yeah, here we are celebrating
You know?
it. Okay.
Exactly. And so I had a conversation with John Crash Matos, which is a world-renowned graph artist and graphic artist, and we decided to do sort of a counter anti-party in front of his gallery down in Bruckner Boulevard, which is very close to where they're having the festivity, the larger shindig, for lack of a better word, and do a protest out front where he would hang artwork from artists, from local artists inside the gallery as much as could be hung, but also have just them all bring something with them that they could hold in front of the gallery.
If I could just summarize based on what you say. So the idea is this is new development in the Bronx. It's going to happen. But if it is going to happen, you want it to be inclusive.
Absolutely.
And if they're going to run an event like that. So then if I can accurately describe it, Ed Garcia Conde went to Swiss. It's a Swiss Beats or Swiss Beats?
Swizz.
Swizz. See, I got that right. Okay. He went to Mr. Beats, and they had a dialogue, and in fact, they did open it up to Bronx artists. Yeah. Makes you feel better?
Well, not entirely. It's a give and take. I mean, the bottom line is that it's good that he sort of owned up to the fact that he made a mistake. What you got to remember is that a lot of these guys, like Swiss Beats, like J-Lo, et cetera, they don't handle all their affairs. His name is stamped on the event itself. He's the one that's facilitating it, but the actual day-to-day work sometimes gets done by someone else. So the end result was that someone in his entourage, or a curator, I believe, a third-party curator, was the one that selected. The problem also became that within 36 people that are in the show, only one had roots within the Bronx, and that was John Ahern. So it was a big issue. It was almost like, we're going to bring art to the Bronx, but you're not included.
It seems to me, and I'm just watching this whole thing develop, it's a very good sign because he's apparently going to be there tomorrow when you do have your event, because I think this developer, as I understand it, and in my, frankly, personal interaction with him, he's like, you know what? Other developers would tell you to get lost, but we really want to do this in the name of the Bronx. My sense, and it's my show, I can say what I want, my editorial sense, is that you've done a good thing to remind them that the Bronx should be part of it. And what I'm hoping is it's going to continue a dialogue that will move things forward.
Right.
So that, and it sounds like you're not that angry just yet.
We're not, we are offended by it, but the other piece that you got to remember also is that using artists in the community, especially when you bring up external artists, it's happened in Dumbo, it's happened in the Lower East Side, Spanish Harlem, that's always a way to see the community, to make it appear chic, elegant, and then once the artists have made the area look beneficial and you can sort of then create your development, the first people to go are the locals, right? They price you out, etc. So even though they're saying they want to work with us, we're not entirely convinced that it's altruistic.
Well, let's find out. I mean, we don't have more time to develop it, but I'm glad we got to. And where is your event going to be tomorrow?
It's going to be at Wallworks, which is 39 Bruckner Boulevard.
Great.
And it happens from 6 to 9 p.m.
And Joe Conzo is a really nice guy and a great photographer.
Thank you.
Joe, it's great to have you. Edwin Pagan. I mean, these guys are just, to me, telling the stories. You can look up the news stories. You can do anything else you want to do. But if you really want to see what the Bronx was like and get an historical perspective of these photos, and you said your photos are available at Cornell University.
You can do research online at Cornell University.
Has an archive of many of your photos.
10,000 of my images.
And listen, the other four guys, we don't want to leave them out. Francisco, Ricky,
David, and Angel.
And Angel. Okay, great. Seis del Sur. Guess what? We're done. See you next week, and we'll see you Bronx Talk. We're doing a debate in the 33rd Senatorial District Monday night. Good night.
Hello, good people of the Bronx and beyond. Welcome to A Life in Art.